¿no? El siguiente expositor lleva 16 años ayudando a mejorar la calidad de las empresas y sobre todo a acelerar la entrega de software. Hay muchos datos que podemos ver sobre él, pero a mí me gustaría resaltar algunos que me parecieron muy curiosos, porque además de tener 3 hijos, tiene un perro genial, que le encantan los perros, y es colega mío, o sea, es mago semiprofesional. Entonces, de pronto, ahora les damos una sorpresa. Él no se lo espera, pero vamos a ver qué pasa. Un aplauso, por favor, para Clay Nelson.
Check. Here we go. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Nothing like being last. But we've talked about some great experiences. ¿Quién quiere una cerveza? And that's the most important thing. I know I'm holding this up from the cervezas, so I will be fast. But we've been talking about some great experiences today. Excuse me while I get this fixed. And I want to talk a little bit about engineering experiences and the focusing on development. So who here is familiar with GitHub? That's good to know. How many developers are here? Okay. So GitHub is a sticker company that sometimes makes software. So let's, with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about experience. So let's see. So this is Angelica. And yesterday, like my friend Richard, I wanted to experience the authentic Colombia. So yesterday in Bogota, I went to a farmer's market. And I got to taste fruits that, well, I wasn't familiar with, things that we don't have in the States. And I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Now, Angelica is not a full-time tour guide. She is a part-time tour guide. She's one who really wants people to know the true, authentic Colombia. And so she, once a week on Sundays, takes people to the farmer's market so they can taste Colombia, because I'm kind of getting hungry. I don't know about you, but that is what I think of is food really transfers an experience and connects you to culture. So, but why do I start a technology conference talking about food and a food market? Well, first let me tell you how I met Angelica. Everyone's familiar with Airbnb? All right. So Airbnb now has experiences. So not only can you find a hotel, or a room rather, you can connect to individuals who are passionate about their topic and give you that authentic experience. Now, I went to the farmer's market. What's neat about this is not just this idea of experience, which we've heard all day today, but this is an example of a platform that's connecting individuals and doing business in a way that's very different, or something that we've seen in the past several years change from a pipeline business model to a platform business model. So Airbnb doesn't employ any tour guides. You want to learn how to dance a tango in Buenos Aires? You can go find someone who teaches you without going to a class or without signing up with a tour company. And what we've learned is experience is increasingly the product. So a little thought experiment, and again, I know it's late, but think about the last time you've had a bad experience with a brand, with a company. Did you do business with that company again? Maybe sometimes you were kind of stuck. Now think about a good experience. What's the difference? We've seen this word a little bit earlier today, just a few minutes ago, actually. Friction. Jeff Rosenblum's book points out that increasingly, as we've seen today, all of our ways that we touch consumers, or way our brands touch consumers, are increasingly digital. And the brands that excel are those brands that remove friction from the experience. So think Uber, it just happens to be that many of these are platform companies. This is something that we think about at GitHub when we think about how do we remove the friction from our jobs as engineers and developers. So when software is how we interact with the customer primarily now, this idea of software is eating the world from Mark Andreessen, is one of our earlier investors. So this is from our friends at Microsoft. All of these ways that we're transforming business, how you empower your employees, engaging customers, all that's software-driven, but it's all done by software engineers. Now, this is from a slide a few weeks ago. From a story a few weeks ago on CNBC. This is amazing to me. Companies say that lack of access to software developers is a bigger threat to their success than the capital to implement digital transformation. That's good for software engineers. That sounds good to me. But I don't know about you, but I was kind of amazed. I've been in this business a while. I was amazed at some of the technology I've seen today. And that's just in the past 4 or 5 years. Who thinks that's going to stop? Who thinks that we can keep up with this all by ourselves? And I think that's why we have to work as a community. So here's the primary point. You know the expression, shoemaker's children? The shoemaker's children are always the ones with the worst shoes. Yes? Okay. This seems to happen for developers. We're building all this amazing stuff for our consumers and for our customers and our employees, but then we don't focus on engineering the experience for our development teams. We have to go to multiple tools. We have to go to we spend a lot of times in meetings. This is not scalable. So the message is especially if your boss is here, we have to think about engineering the end-to-end experience because we're building those experiences. But yet we spend, imagine this. I flew over here yesterday from Bogota. If the pilot had to get up in the middle of the flight, walk to the back of the plane, and adjust the flaps, I would be concerned. But we do this sort of thing all the time as engineers. We have multiple places for our information. And what we're trying to focus on is what can we do to make it easier so we don't have to go to multiple places. And I'll come back to that idea in a minute. I'm going to skip past a couple of these because honestly, this is we've talked a lot about this today. I want to focus on what stands in the way. One of the things that stands in the way, who works for a company that's older than 5 years old? Okay, who's older than 10? So you guys saw some great ideas presented today. What keeps you from implementing those? In many cases, this morass of technology that prevents us from operating in an agile manner. And that morass of technology has come together because of the way we communicate. In other words, the architecture and the communication systems are congruent. And if you're trying to completely re-engineer, move to a brand new architecture, microservices or lightweight architecture, and you're not changing the way you collaborate, and your teams are still these real big teams, it's very difficult to evolve to be able to deliver in that pace which these platform communities are setting. And as I mentioned earlier, it's only increasing. This is from Thomas Friedman, and he references Eric Teller, who's the head of research at Google. And it's a very simple but compelling graph that shows that we don't, as humans, change as fast as the technology that we're implementing. And we don't always think systemically. And so we don't recognize that we're using old methods to try and keep up with brand new technology. So this brings us to this idea, who have heard of Melvin Conway or Conway's Law? So I'll just read it because it's important. Organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structure of those organizations. So if you want to change and adopt all these lightweight architectures, you have to change your methods, you have to change sometimes your organizational structure, and adopt smaller teams. They are hard to separate. Now, one way that we're seeing people to change internally is adopt what works in the open source community and bring that inside of their own organizations. And it's called inner source. Has anybody heard of this term? If you remember one thing from what I tell you today, this is it. Go look at inner source. Because it's inverting the way we set up teams and the tools and the way we share information on those teams. This is probably how you have worked in the past or maybe even working now. A new project starts up. We get everybody on that project, and they have access to the source code. They have access to Jira or whoever you're managing your user stories and work, and then nobody else can see it. It's ours. Inner source inverts that idea. Now, we start with the idea that inside of our own organization, we can trust each other. And not everybody can actually make changes to the production code, of course, or production builds. But by opening up and inverting that access to the code, we are reducing some of the coordination complexity that exists in that mass of a map that I showed a minute ago. So inner source is inverting the collaboration model, is taking how open source developers work, people who don't see each other on a regular basis, and still we manage to deliver Linux and Kubernetes and many languages that we use. So, I told you I like to cook, I can tell. Have you ever heard of this idea of mise en place? So the idea that everything has to be in its place before I can really get into a flow. It's my inspiration there, Anthony Bourdain, for one of the reasons why I went to Bogota Farmers Market as well. But I think that's an idea that's captured in this book called Flow. Anyone heard of that idea, flow? Getting in this rhythm. Artists sometimes can't explain how they just produce, or whether it's a painter or whether it's a musician, they get in flow. I believe the developers get in flow too, but we have lots of interruptions that prevent us from staying there. This is the modern landscape for cloud-native computing. That's a lot of stuff to try to keep up with. That's a lot of complexity. So if we're trying to get in flow and learn what, or maybe teach our management or teach our executives what it is that developers need in order to be more productive and effective at delivering customer experience, it's to reduce the amount of context switching. It's the pilot idea. I should not have to leave my development environment to comment on work. I should not have to leave to go check the status of a build. As much as I can put in my situational awareness cockpit, that improves the amount of my likelihood of staying in flow. We also want to find assets inside the organization or within open source community more seamlessly. We want to be able to connect with experts either down the hall or around the world. We want to build your reputation as a developer in the community, in Medellín, in your organization, and globally. And be a part of a larger community. Mentor people in the context of the code that we're working on. And that's what the GitHub platform is. Those are the things that we think of when we try to build the experience that is GitHub. We don't want to be all things to all people. We want you to pick the tooling that fits best for your development environment. Our CTO likes to refer to software tooling as fashion. And if you've been in this business long enough, you know continuous integration tools and testing tools and everything, these things change very quickly. And so we like to think of best of breed so that you can change those things out quickly. And so we build a robust API that lets the GitHub community build the tooling that works best for it. We don't want to do it all. We just want to be a really good community for developers. And since we are talking about data, it's important to think, GitHub has 350 terabytes of data over the past 10 years. It's the largest data platform that's focused on developers that's ever existed. And we're trying to use that to build our own machine learning models that will make the mundane tasks of development less mundane. So we want to be able to, if you forget to include somebody in a review, the platform should tell you, hey, we need to get this business unit to review this. Or did you know that you have a component that you're using, there's been a change in that component, the security team has recognized that there's an issue. Building dependency models and dependency graphs that can catch security bugs before they make it. Anybody ever accidentally put their cloud password in code somewhere? Happens. We're trying to make sure it doesn't. Building scanning tooling into the platform to catch those things before they get committed into the code. And community. We want you to be able to have a single developer identification, your profile, both inside and outside of GitHub. Inside and outside of your enterprise. And so we've launched the first release of this recently. So there's now, for me, there's github.com, and we have an enterprise platform, which is the on-premises. Those things now connect, or can connect, so that you can develop your personal profile out on github.com with things that you're working on privately behind your firewall for your business. We're also now, you're also able to search the open source community for reusable assets from inside of the firewall on GitHub Enterprise. So this is our LATAM team. We've been functioning down here as a team for about 1.5 years. We continue to grow. We're really excited about the prospects and the partnership with Globant. I think there's another company that spoke earlier you may have heard we're going to be a part of at some point. So we'll be joining the team of Microsoft sometime later this year. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for being GitHubbers. And let's go get a beer.